Hi, everybody. Welcome to our little vignette here, introducing you to a great new exhibit at the Henry Ford Museum of American Innovation. You already know all the great things and fun things to explore at the Henry Ford. But this is something new and different. If your kids have been into the Marvel movies or Marvel comic books or all the Marvel apparel, and by the way, I am not Captain America. I'm Guy Gordon from News Talk 760 WJR. But as you can see, I am a Marvel enthusiast is a nicer name than geek, but that is because all of my three children were Marvel fans. I'm a Marvel fan, and we're really excited about this exhibit at the Henry Ford Museum of American Innovation that really takes you inside a lot of the memorabilia, some great interactive exhibits. We want to introduce it to you, and to do that, we bring in Kate Morland, who is the exhibits manager at the Henry Ford. Kate, inquiring minds want to know, when you were setting up this exhibit, did you actually pick up Captain America's shield?
Oh, I didn't pick up the shield, but we have an excellent team of art handlers, and they actually got to get their hands on some of those fun objects.
Because I went through the exhibit just a couple of days ago, and I wanted to get beyond the glass and actually pick that up because it's really metal. I mean, it looks like a really heavy shield.
Yes, these movies are just so incredibly accurate, and they're so popular that I think they really want to get things right. Our team was also able to pick up Thor's hammer, in case you were wondering. So we had some worthy people.
And does it have some heft to it?
I think it does a bit, yes, but not as much as you'd be led to believe in the movies.
Well, because Chris Hemsworth, he's got the muscles. We know he can do it. That doesn't mean he wants to do it for 14, 15 hour a day shooting. Let's just talk about the exhibit and how you've got it laid out. It is chock full of authentic memorabilia from the film sets, and really, I mean, it is Iron Man's costume, several costumes that were worn by Robert Downey Jr. and things like that. Kind of hit the highlights for us.
We have 300 artifacts, and it starts from the early days of Marvel Comics in 1939. We actually have a copy of Marvel Comics #1 and an original art page from that comic. And then it takes you all the way through the flowering, you could say, of the series in the early 60s, where you have Spider-Man, Iron Man, all coming together at that time, through the newest movies, beginning with Iron Man in 2008 and ending with Avengers Endgame, and then Spider-Man has continued on beyond that.
And we should point out what I loved about this exhibit and it's because the Marvel Universe is so huge and the characters touch so many different people, is that we're 75 years into the Marvel Universe in terms of the comics. In terms of the movies and the reboot of them, we're 2 decades into that. I mean, the reboot on Spider-Man was 2002. So if your kids are even in their 20s, they still have, it's kind of like Harry Potter, they still have really fond memories of the Marvel movie starting out. If your kids are grandchildren now, if you've got a second generation there. And that's what I saw at the exhibit, was 3 generations who all had this common excitement and this common love of the Marvel Universe. Grandparents who remember Spider-Man from the 60s when they read the comics, their children who were in their 20s, and then grandchildren who are now, anywhere from 6 on up would love this exhibit and have seen the movies.
Mm-hmm. I think you hit it exactly, and we try to do that with our exhibits, have those intergenerational conversations and appeal, because we love it when groups of people, be they families or friends, are able to have that shared experience, and then just to hear the level of conversation that they're having, that little kids are impressed that their parents or grandparents have just so much knowledge about the Marvel Universe. It's really great to see, and I'm glad you saw that while you were visiting the exhibit too.
Well, and that was really the cool thing, was the fact that here what were really young people intersecting with grandma and grandpa on a level that they really did relate well. Mm-hmm. I had a funny encounter with one of your young visitors. I wanted to take my own kids, but they're in different places and at jobs now. My grandkids are out on the West Coast, aren't quite old enough for Marvel yet. But as you can see, we still have at the Gordon household hundreds of Marvel comics because we were a Marvel family. My eldest son was not into sports, but he was hugely into Marvel. And that was the glue a lot of times that held us together. That was the thing we had to talk about and the common interest that we had. And that's what I saw there. And you talk about the great conversation. So you've got a board there where you can vote for your favorite superhero and you can see your vote tally in real time. And what I thought was really neat was, number one, of course, Spider-Man. Yeah. You knew that the Spider-Man would still be the favorite. Number two was Black Panther. And I thought that was so cool because the kids in front of me were not African-American children, but they were huge fans of Black Panther. He was number two, and that tells you something, the ability of pop culture to bridge other kinds of divides, gender divides, racial divides, generational divides. And when I put in Daredevil as my favorite, I heard the little guy in front of me say, Daredevil? Who would pick Daredevil? And he heard a voice behind him say, I did. And then he turned around. I said, no, and let me tell you why. Daredevil is the coolest, and here's why. And we had a great conversation, right?
Okay, yeah, you can even do that with strangers.
Yeah. And
it's a shared language.
It really is. I saw a guy in his 40s. You've got a VR exhibit there where you can virtually put on the Iron Man costume and then fire lasers and power pulses out of your palm, just like Iron Man does. Explain some of the other interactive stuff.
Well, we really love that one, especially in our climate now. It's totally touch-free. So that's a perfect one for today. We also have some really immersive environments like Doctor Strange's mirror dimension. That's impressive, I think. There's lots of mirrors and projection all over the place, so you really feel like you're being transported somewhere else. We have some deeper dive content that's on interactive touchscreens in the exhibit. So we really love that this exhibit came to us in a way that someone who is maybe very young can just really appreciate the costumes and the photo ops, but somebody who knows a lot about Marvel can also get something from the exhibit and learn more about the people who worked on these comics and these movies and about the Marvel process. So that's another aspect of the exhibit.
Well, and I think for parents that are watching this or grandparents that are watching this, there are so many great teachable moments, Kate, in terms of just the idea that all of this sprung from Stan Lee's imagination and Jack Kirby's pen and John Romita and his incredible artwork. And that the idea that this can be a career. And this can actually be big business. Marvel is now a multi-billion-dollar empire, now owned by Disney. And I mean, it is part of a mega content universe. And explain to kids that, your imagination is an incredibly powerful thing, and you can use it as a pathway to a career.
Yeah, there's so many different career tracks. There's art, there's writing, there's production. And then you think beyond that, there's people working in finance for these companies. There's people working in set design and building sets and stuff. So really, it's this kind of microcosm of careers that are out there. And I'm glad that you mentioned that, because people can take that passion that they might have for a topic, be it Marvel, be it sports, be it something else, and explore career paths within that they may not have thought about previously.
The other thing that I think is really part of the Marvel ethos and what made Stan Lee brilliant was that he understood young minds. He understood what young people, the challenges they faced. And I mean, this goes back centuries, not just to the beginning of Marvel. And that is, we all get bullied. We all have insecurities. We all are different. Sometimes we feel like outcasts. I had a good friend who had terrible acne and was bullied for it. His favorite Marvel character was the Thing, because from the Fantastic Four, because he was kind of the outcast even in his own family because of the disfigurement. Other kids relate to the Hulk and that he's kind of an outcast too, or just Peter Parker's adolescent angst.
I think that's why he's the most popular one throughout the decades. Spider-Man just keeps coming about because he's relatable to kids.
Exactly. And I think the other one that when I said Daredevil, I mean, we all know a child with a disability who is trying to overcome a challenge. Here's Daredevil. He's blind, but he's adapted his other senses to be, hypersensitive, and he can be a hero even though he has challenges. That's a really important message to send to any child, but especially one that may be facing life with a disability. So I think there's something here really for everybody.
Yeah, I agree.
Tell me about what the times are and tickets and the importance of signing up early.
So we're open daily, 7 days a week through January 31st. And we're open from 9:30 until 5 o'clock. But our last Marvel time slot is 4:30. And if you do get one of those later Marvel time slots, you're welcome to stay in the exhibit a full visit beyond the closing of the museum. I would recommend going online, and online when you're buying tickets, you can see how many tickets are still available for each half-hour time slot. We have a capacity of 50 per time slot, which unfortunately is less than we had hoped for, but because of the pandemic, we believe that that is a safe amount of people to be entering the exhibit at any one time. And for anyone who's been to an exhibit that gets really busy, you'll find this is actually kind of a treat to be able to visit with that low of a number.
You have the ability to get close to the costumes. You have the ability to get into the VR exhibit because you don't have a huge line. I found it really easy to navigate and to get around. And more importantly, I felt safe there. Everybody was wearing their masks. We've got a grandchild that's only a few weeks old that visits with us a lot. So my wife and I are really sensitive about those kinds of encounters. And yet, as you said, you can still have conversations with the person next to you who might be 6 feet away, but just say, do you remember that scene? And do you remember that moment and how cool it is? Kate, I just think it's a wonderful opportunity to start a lot of cool conversations in families. And it really is a multi-generational conversation starter.
It is. I'm glad you agree with that. And hopefully people will be impressed with everything that we have in the exhibit. We even have a local connection. There's Amulet, who's a newer superhero. He's part of the Miss Marvel series, and he is from Dearborn, his character is. So a little bit of a local interest there.
Didn't know about that. And there are certainly other opportunities. The one that I love that we want folks to watch out for is the Find Ant-Man exhibit. It's just kind of like Where's Waldo, only much smaller.
Oh, yes, teeny tiny.
So thanks you so much, Kate. It's just a great exhibit. We encourage everybody out to go do it. And we've got some other information about the Henry Ford. Stay tuned for that. Take care, Kate. Thank you.
Thanks. You too, Guy.
Now I'm joined by Patricia Moradian, who is the CEO and president of the Henry Ford Museum of American Innovation. Patricia,
hi.
Hello.
Hi. Thank you for having me on.
Well, it's first of all, we just want to get out the message that you guys are very much open for business at Greenfield Village and the Henry Ford.
We are open for business. The village and the museum have been open since July 2nd. The museum is open the typical 7 days a week. Because of the Marvel exhibit and its popularity. The village is still operating on a 4-day a week, but we're thrilled to have it open. And we just ask all our guests to check the internet before you go, sign up for your time and look at all of the different things that are going on during the day.
So we know that if we're going into stores, sometimes there may be a cap on how many people are allowed inside. Right. If we visit the Henry Ford, Greenfield Village is outdoors, so that's less of an issue.
It is.
But first of all, when I show up, is my temperature going to be checked? Just walk me through some of the precautions to make sure that it's a good environment for everybody.
We have taken all the necessary safety precautions. We are not taking temperatures, but we are requiring masks for everybody. When you are in the village, you must enter with a mask, and there are certain mask on areas because, as you know, there are certain things in the village that are enclosed, or perhaps there's a line to get on the carousel. The train is running, the carousel is running, the playground is open. So there's plenty to do, lots of outdoor space. We are still limiting capacity, and that's why we ask everyone to go online to sign up for a specific time, because we don't want all the crowds to get there at the same time. That would make social distancing difficult. So the mask, lots of hand sanitizing stations, a lot of extra cleaning. And then in the museum, it is mask on required for the entire visit. We do have restaurants open in both the museum and the village. So the new Plum Market Kitchen in the museum is open, and the Taste of History is open. The custard stand outside in Greenfield Village, which is so popular every summer, that's open too.
You know, I'm reminded when I was talking with Kate about the exhibit, it's the whole thing about what I love about Greenfield Village. Going back to when I first visited, probably in 1968 or 9 with my mother, we drove down from Grand Rapids with some good friends, is that I got a chance to take a window into her childhood. I learned there that her mom had chickens in the backyard.
Oh,
I never knew that. Things
yeah.
that this is a great place to start conversations about family history. And so even beyond the Marvel exhibit, that when you walk into the Henry Ford, I still get goosebumps when I see the Kennedy limousine and the DC-3, where I got my first plane ride was in a DC-3. And of course, the Rosa Parks bus, that you can share these moments with your kids, even if you're not Marvel fans.
Right. It's so true. And I love that you just used the word goosebumps, because I talked to my team about how do we give our guests goosebump moments? We have to give the goosebump moments. And there are so many there, with not just the iconic artifacts, but just the experiences in general, and the way the staff is, the master presenters, the history they have, and they tailor it to the questions of the guests and the experience of the guests. So it really is a unique experience. I've been there 20 years. I learned something every single day. And you're right about family traditions. I raised my children going there, and they come home and visit and love to go there. And they still love to go to Halloween and holiday nights and ride the carousel and do all the fun things. So it's a wonderful, wonderful resource and extraordinary destination in our community. We're so fortunate to have it.
Well, and I don't know that he'll remember it, but I took my 2-year-old grandson there last year. And, I've had a lot of great experiences with your museum just because of the job I had in TV. When we were celebrating a century of cars, we shot a lot of it in your museum. And so I got to tell him, I said, you see that Firebird 2 over there?
Yeah.
I actually drove that turbine car. So and even if you haven't had some of the privileges that I've had, you can still start those conversations and talk about your family history.
Right. Well, it is wonderful, and there's something for everybody, truly something for everybody. And what's great is we are still a collecting institution. So we're always collecting things. And when we collected the Rosa Parks bus, it was such a celebration of history and events, and figuring out how to tell that story. And those stories are still alive today, and they keep us engaged and curious. And I love that. I love seeing multi-generational families sitting on the bus or walking through the museum and having the conversations. And it's just such an important resource to have. We are going to open a new exhibit next year on racing. So you're going to have to come back and see that. That's a permanent exhibit, and we've been collecting for it for a good 20 years or more. And so the cars that we have and the stories we tell are going to be just phenomenal.
Well, I hope there is a virtual track involved so that some of us can get behind the wheel, perhaps. I bet
you'll be very happy when you see what we have in store. So, and that's all I can say, because it's going to have to be a surprise.
So, well, that gives me something to look forward to. As we should remind people that while a lot of the cultural institutions in our area are supported by specific millages and have that cushion, maybe when attendance falls, like we've seen with the coronavirus.
Right.
The Henry Ford and Greenfield Village is not part of that program. That you're very dependent on people like me coming in and bringing our families.
We definitely are. Our entire business model is built on the business of generating revenue, but we only generate about 65% of the operating revenue that we need. We do not have a millage. We, in this case, with the pandemic, were not eligible for the funding from the government, the PPP funding, which was really, really unfortunate for us. We were too big. There were minimum set of or maximums of staff numbers, and we exceeded that, so we were not eligible. And so we have really had to rely on the generosity of our stakeholders, our donors, our members, our visitors and guests. We started a campaign called Reactivate the Henry Ford after being closed for 4 months. It took a toll. I mean, if we
Right.
do a business model based on generating revenue and you're closed, there's no generation of revenue coming in. So what we've been doing, we did negotiate the extension of the Marvel exhibit, and we were just so fortunate that they agreed to do that because it was scheduled to close at the end of September. With the shortening, then it would have been really, really difficult for us to figure out how to allow enough guests in during that time. So they gave us the great opportunity to extend it through January, which now gives us opportunity for more guests to see it, and we can begin to chip away at the deficit that we are going to have at the end of the year due to the pandemic.
Well, and we should point out to people that just because we don't have the millage apparatus for the Henry Ford like we do other cultural institutions, that doesn't mean that from the bottom of our hearts that we can't do that by becoming members of Greenfield Village and the Henry Ford. Mm-hmm. And it really is, at least I think, quite affordable considering what a gift you are to the community.
Well, thank you. We have so many different ways to make membership affordable. There are different levels. And we encourage our community to become members. There are tremendous benefits. It's all online. The biggest benefit of all is if you become a member, you have virtually free access to the museum and the village all year long for an entire year. And then there are other benefits depending on the level that you purchase. But what we're saying with the Reactivate is you can become a member. Absolutely, that's great. It helps. You can visit. That helps. You can shop in the stores, shop in the restaurants, enjoy the rides, but you can also become a donor. And those are the 3 ways that our community can help us reactivate. And in addition to what you said about the millage, another thing that people think is because our name is Henry Ford, that we're connected to the motor company or we're connected to the Ford Foundation, neither of which is we don't, while we apply to them for funding and we get it when it's applicable, and we're grateful for our partnership with both organizations. It's not an automatic that if we had a budget deficit, it just gets shored up on the other side by the generosity of those 2 organizations. So.
Right. Well, we're delighted that you have this very cool magnet to bring people back to the Henry Ford and to Greenfield Village. And as the village is open through the end of September and then some special events after that.
Special events, October, we're doing the Halloween program. Look online for the dates. We're excited about it. We figured out a way to do it in order to keep everyone as safe as possible. The same with the holiday nights. We're planning to do that as well. And we can't wait to see all the happy, smiling faces. And they are outdoors. Those programs are outdoors, so they become very doable for families of all sizes. So.
Well, we want to remind people that they can go to thehenryford.org to learn more about the Marvel exhibit and to learn more about how they can become supporters. Now, I've got some catching up to do, some reading to catch up. I've been inspired by my trip to the Marvel universe of superheroes. So good. I will bid you a goodbye, Patricia. Thank you so much for sharing the story of the Henry Ford and Greenfield Village.
Thank you so much for being a supporter and a fan and for having us on your show. Much appreciated.
And we appreciate you. And for those of you that have joined us, thank you for joining us. We hope you'll visit the Henry Ford and the Marvel exhibit. It is a grand opportunity to have some great storytelling and learning moments with your kids and your grandkids and build those bridges that are so important in your family. Thanks for joining us. I'm Guy Gordon. Take care.
Thanks, Guy.